I moved in with my sister and her perfect husband to escape my toxic parents, but I didn't realize I was walking straight into the arms of a predator. Hi, my name is Clara. I was 19 in my second year of university, balancing exams, a part-time job, and a long list of unresolved childhood trauma I never asked for. I wasn't raised by parents, not really. I was raised by chaos, and when chaos wears your last name, you start looking for shelter anywhere you can find it. For me, that shelter was Sophie, my older sister, 13 years older, with a gentle voice and a spine made of steel. While our parents were too busy fighting over bills and betrayals, Sophie was the one making sure I had lunch for school. She taught me how to braid my hair, how to make pasta, how to breathe through a panic attack without making a sound. She wasn't just my sister. She was my home. Sophie had built a life I admired. No, idolized. She had stability, a career, a calm presence that made people lean in. And then there was Leo, her husband, older, grounded, kind, or so I thought. Leo was the kind of man who opened jars without being asked, who knew how to set a table properly, who smiled in the same quiet way every time he looked at Sophie. To a girl like me, someone who had grown up dodging verbal landmines and slamming bedroom doors, Leo seemed like the gold standard for what a good man should look like. He was calm, thoughtful. He always remembered to ask how my exams were going, and when I'd come over for Sunday dinners, he would listen with genuine interest when I talked about the animals I cared for at the vet clinic. I saw him almost like a second older sibling, a soft-spoken protector, which is what made everything so much harder later. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The shift happened after one particularly brutal argument with my parents. I'd asked, begged for a little help with my university rent. Instead, I got a screaming match and a slammed door. The next day, I called Sophie. My voice cracked before I could even get the words out. She didn't hesitate. Pack your bags. Come stay with us. Just like that, I moved into their spacious suburban home. 3 bedrooms, a garden in the back, quiet neighbors who waved politely but kept to themselves. For the first time in what felt like forever, I exhaled, really exhaled. No tension in my chest, no footsteps to flinch at, just peace. Leo worked from home as a software architect, always typing, always in his home office. But he made time, offered to drive me to campus when my shifts lined up awkwardly with classes, even made me tea in the evenings. Sophie, who worked longer hours, was relieved I had support while she rested. And then she got pregnant. It was joyous, miraculous even. Sophie had had a few miscarriages in the past, stories she only shared once, late at night, when we were both a little too tired to guard our pain. This pregnancy was high risk, but it was everything she wanted. She was cautious, always checking every symptom. Leo became doting, overprotective even. I wanted to be helpful. I wanted to be invisible when necessary. I didn't want to cause stress, so I told myself the little weird moments with Leo were just misunderstandings. Like when he started asking more and more about my personal life. "You seeing anyone lately?" he asked once, his eyes fixed on mine a little too long. I shrugged. "Not really." He grinned. "Salmon, a pretty girl like you must have someone." It made me uncomfortable, but I laughed it off. Maybe he was just being friendly. Or when I came downstairs in shorts and a t-shirt and saw him standing by the patio, his eyes scanning me a moment too slowly before turning back to his garden. I tried to tell myself I imagined it. Or when I'd step out of the shower, towel wrapped tight, and find him right there in the hallway, every single time. Always smiling, always saying, "Sleep well, Clara," holding eye contact a second too long. But I couldn't say anything. Sophie needed rest, she needed calm, and Leo had never crossed a clear line. I just noticed things, subtle things, things I couldn't explain without sounding paranoid or ungrateful. Still, those things started adding up, like invisible weights in my stomach. I found myself triple locking the bathroom door. I started timing my showers when I knew he would be out of the house. But I didn't say a word. Not until Ben. Ben was different. I met him at the clinic. He ran an animal rescue nearby. Kind eyes, messy hair, always smelling faintly of hay and soap. He wasn't slick like the guys at school, and I loved that about him. We started talking, bonded over rescued cats and traumatized dogs. A few weeks later, he asked me out for coffee. I said yes. And when I told Leo, everything changed. Leo's reaction to me going on a date was off. Not annoyed, not protective like an older brother might be. No, it was something else entirely. I had just mentioned Ben in passing. We were in the kitchen. Sophie was napping upstairs. I was smiling without realizing it, telling Leo how Ben and I were going to grab coffee after my shift. And just like that, the temperature in the room changed. He stopped chopping vegetables mid-slice. His jaw clenched. "You're going out with someone?" I laughed nervously. confused by the sudden tension. Yeah, just coffee. He didn't smile. He didn't even blink. Then he said it. What about us? The words hit me like a car crash. I blinked, thinking I misheard him. His voice dropped lower. You know what I mean. No, Leo, I really didn't. Or maybe I did, and I just didn't want to admit it. He turned away, resumed chopping. The silence was deafening. My heart was pounding. I felt the urge to run upstairs and wake Sophie, but what would I even say? That her husband said something creepy? That I felt like prey in her house? No proof, just a gut feeling and a handful of uncomfortable moments that suddenly weren't so random anymore. I excused myself, grabbed my phone, and locked myself in the guest bathroom. My hands were shaking. I searched online for things like family member acting weird, living with brother-in-law who's too friendly, and then finally I typed what I really meant. Signs of grooming. The results were nauseatingly familiar. Boundary testing, subtle sexual comments disguised as jokes, emotional manipulation, isolation, watching, waiting. I felt sick. I didn't sleep that night. Every time a floorboard creaked, I sat upright. I kept my phone under my pillow, flashlight ready, door locked. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I avoided Leo. I left early for my shift at the clinic. When I got home, I headed straight to my room. But Leo didn't let that last long. He started texting me, a lot, asking where I was, who I was with, whether I was safe. At first, it looked like concern. Then it became control. When I didn't respond quickly enough, he sent longer messages, angry ones, rambling ones, calling me inconsiderate, selfish, ungrateful. I showed one of them to Ben. We were sitting behind the clinic after hours, watching a stray cat inch closer to a saucer of tuna. I handed him my phone in silence. He read it, then again. This guy's your brother-in-law? He asked, his voice tightening. I nodded. He scrolled through a few more. This isn't normal, Clara. I know. Then Ben looked me in the eye. Do you feel safe there? That question cracked something in me. I shook my head, tears spilling over before I could stop them. Ben didn't ask any more questions. He just said, get your stuff, I'm taking you somewhere safe. I didn't pack much, just essentials and some clothes. I left Sophie a note. I'm okay. I'm safe. I'll call you soon. Please don't worry. Then I slipped out the back door. Leo texted me less than 10 minutes later. Where are you? Why are you being like this? After everything we've done for you, you're just like them. Selfish. A parasite. I blocked his number. That didn't stop him. He called from another line and another. Eventually, Ben took the phone from me and answered. You need to leave her the hell alone, he said. If you contact Clara again, I'm going to the police. Don't test me. Then he hung up and turned my phone off completely. He drove me to his parents' property, this beautiful, sprawling farm with a guest house out back. His mom met me at the door with open arms and eyes that said she understood. I don't know what Ben had told her on the drive, but I didn't need to explain much. That night, I slept without checking the locks. The next day, I called Sophie. Her voice was soft, tired. I was hoping you'd call. I hesitated. Did Leo tell you anything? A pause. Then, he said you ran off, that you were being reckless. But I know him. I saw him that night. He wasn't just worried, Clara. He was furious. I could hear her breathing unevenly. I heard him yelling after you left, slamming things, breaking stuff. He didn't know I was awake. And then she said it, the words I'd needed to hear. I believe you. We both cried. Sophie told me she already made an appointment with a lawyer, that she was staying with our parents temporarily, just until she could figure out what to do. They were horrified, apparently guilty, maybe for letting both of us grow up needing to be rescued. In the days that followed, I sent Sophie screenshots of the texts, the online articles that had helped me realize what was happening. She was heartbroken. Not just for me, for the version of Leo she believed in, for the man she now realized had been wearing a mask. For the first time in a long time, it felt like we were both waking up from the same nightmare. Looking back, I think the shift in Leo started long before Ben ever entered the picture. It started when Sophie announced she was pregnant. We were in the living room. I remember the way she held her breath as she showed me the test hands, trembling, smile fighting its way through a wall of fear. After 3 miscarriages, hope felt like a fragile thing, but this one stuck. Every week was a milestone, every ultrasound a celebration. Leo cried when they heard the heartbeat. He kissed Sophie's forehead and whispered promises about how everything was going to be different this time. Better. And for a while I believed him. We all tried to wrap Sophie in safety. She stopped working. She rested constantly. I took over more house chores, Leo was attentive at least when Sophie was watching. But that attentiveness had another side, one that quietly turned inward, toward me. It started small, quiet. You don't have to worry about chores, he would say. You've got school and work. Let me drive you. Really? I appreciated it. At first, until I started noticing that he always made time to be near me. Always. If I came downstairs early, Leo was already there, waiting. If I said I'd walk to class, he insisted on driving. If I had a long shift at the clinic, he would text mid-shift, asking what time I'd be home. Then again if I was 5 minutes late. You should have told me, he would say in that low even tone that made everything feel like my fault. I told myself he was just overprotective. That maybe it was because Sophie was pregnant and emotions were running high. That maybe I was imagining things, again. But the red flags kept coming. One morning I came into the kitchen still half asleep. I was wearing a long t-shirt, one of Sophie's old ones that hit just above my knees. I didn't notice Leo sitting in the corner until he cleared his throat. He looked me up and down and said, "Didn't know breakfast came with a view." I froze. "What?" I asked, my voice sharp, hoping I'd misunderstood. He smirked. "Relax, Clara. Just a joke." I avoided the kitchen after that. I told Sophie I was starting to feel guilty about staying rent-free, that maybe I should move back to the dorms, but she waved it off. "You're helping more than you know," she said, patting her belly. "And besides, you're family. This is your home too." Home. That word hit differently now. Because my safe place no longer felt safe. And Sophie, the person I trusted more than anyone, had no idea that I was quietly unraveling under her roof. It wasn't just the comments. It was the way Leo always found reasons to brush against me when we passed in the hallway, or how he would walk into the living room when I was stretching after a long shift, pretending he needed something from the bookshelf, always lingering, always watching. Once I caught him standing at the edge of the backyard, staring through the glass door as I lay sunbathing with earbuds in. He didn't flinch when I looked up, just smiled and waved. That night, I double-locked my bedroom door. But nothing compared to the hallway encounters. Always around 10 p.m., right after my shower, I'd step out in a towel, heart racing, hoping to avoid him. And every time, without fail, he was there. "Good night, Clara," he would say, voice syrupy and slow, eyes fixed, not blinking. I stopped showering at night. I shifted everything, my schedule, my clothes, my behavior, just to avoid setting him off. But even then he would find a new angle, a new way to inch closer, a new reason to test the limits. The scariest part wasn't the escalation. It was how normal he kept everything on the surface. He still called me kiddo, still made tea, still talked about software projects and baby names and grocery lists like everything was fine, like he wasn't quietly cornering me with unspoken threats wrapped in politeness. And I couldn't tell Sophie. How do you tell a woman who's finally pregnant after years of heartbreak that her husband is slowly grooming her little sister? How do you say those words without sounding crazy or cruel? I told myself I'd wait. I'd finish the semester. I'd move out quietly. No drama, no disruption. But then Ben asked me out, and everything came crashing down. Leo's anger that day wasn't just creepy. It was possessive. As if I'd betrayed some silent agreement I never agreed to. As if he had a claim over me. And that's when the fear crystallized into something more. Not suspicion, not doubt, but clarity. Clear, undeniable truth that I was not safe in that house. That Leo, this man I once saw as a role model, had been manipulating me under the guise of kindness, that his smiles were calculated. His concern, a trap, his stability, a performance. That realization nearly broke me. Because it meant that everything I thought I knew about safety, about family, about trust was wrong, and worse, it meant Sophie had no idea. That she was carrying this man's child. That she believed she was safe too. I wanted to protect her. I wanted to shield her from the truth. But I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. And that's when I made the call to Ben, the one that changed everything. Ben picked me up in the pouring rain. I hadn't even told him everything, just that I wasn't okay, that I needed to get out, and still he didn't hesitate. He just said, "Where are you? I'm on my way." I stood on the corner of a quiet street near campus, holding a small duffel bag and clutching my soaked hoodie tighter. The second I saw his truck turn the corner, I exhaled like my lungs had been holding their breath for weeks. Ben didn't ask questions at first. He just opened the passenger door and said, "You're safe now." But of course Leo couldn't leave it at that. My phone buzzed before we even made it out of the neighborhood. First a call, then another, then a flood of messages. "Where are you? How dare you sneak out like a coward? I opened my home to you. You repay me like this? You're just like your parents, weak, selfish." Each message made my hands shake harder. The words didn't sound like Leo anymore. not the calm, dependable Leo I'd once looked up to. This was something darker, unmasked. Ben finally reached over, took the phone out of my hand, and read a few of the messages in silence. Then, without a hint of hesitation, he answered the next call. Leo, he said, calm but firm. You need to back off. You're not going to manipulate her anymore. He paused, listening. I could hear Leo's voice through the speaker, agitated, high-pitched, almost frantic. Ben cut him off. You're not her father, you're not her anything, and if you call or text again, we go to the police. You understand me? Silence. Then Ben hung up and turned off my phone. He didn't ask if I wanted him to. He just knew. We drove in silence for a while. I stared out the window, watching raindrops slide down the glass like tiny exhausted runners. Everything inside me felt heavy and quiet, like I was finally feeling the full weight of what I'd been carrying. I'm sorry, I said eventually. Ben shook his head. Don't apologize, you didn't do anything wrong. That sentence alone almost made me cry, because no one had ever said that to me, not about this, not in a way that sounded like truth. We arrived at his family's property, a quiet stretch of land on the edge of town, rolling hills, a few barns, a cozy guest house behind the main farmhouse. His parents were already waiting at the door. His mom looked at me and just opened her arms. Come in, honey. I didn't even have to explain. They didn't press for details. They didn't ask me to prove anything. They just gave me a towel, a warm blanket, and a room of my own. That night, I cried for hours. Not because I was afraid anymore, but because I finally felt safe. The next day, after I'd eaten something and gotten a few hours of real sleep, I called Sophie. She answered on the first ring. Clara, she breathed, her voice already trembling. I didn't sleep. I've been so worried. Are you okay? I'm okay, I said. I'm safe. I couldn't stay there. There was a pause. Then I know. Those two words stopped me cold. You know, I wasn't asleep, she whispered. That night, when you left, I heard him shouting after you, and when he couldn't find you, he lost it. I held my breath. He smashed a lamp, punched the wall, threw a chair. I stayed upstairs. I didn't know what to do. Her voice broke. I asked him what happened. He said you were ungrateful, that you'd snuck off to meet some guy. He tried to sound calm, but Clara, I saw it in his eyes, rage and fear, like a man whose mask had slipped and didn't know how to get it back on. Tears ran down my cheeks. I wanted to believe him, she continued. I wanted to believe he was just scared that he was protecting you. But when I found the messages you sent him, when I saw how he spoke to you, she paused again. Then I believe you. I didn't realize how badly I needed those words until I heard them. It felt like someone had reached into my chest and finally pulled out the fear festering there. We talked for a long time. I told her everything, the hallway stares, the suggestive comments, the gaslighting, the lingering presence. And then I showed her something I hadn't even planned to, the forum posts. Although I'd taken screenshots of online threads, messages from other women who had gone through the same quiet horror, patterns that matched mine down to the smallest detail. That community, those strangers, had helped me see clearly when I felt like I was going crazy. Sophie read every word, and she cried with me. I can't stay with him, she whispered. I don't even know who he is anymore. He's not who he made us think he was, I said. She nodded. I need to get out for me, for the baby. And just like that, the woman who had always protected me was finally choosing to protect herself. Sophie filed for divorce 3 days later. No dramatic fight, no screaming match, just a quiet meeting with a lawyer, followed by a handwritten note left on the kitchen counter. Don't contact me. My family knows everything. That was it. I'll never forget the message she sent me afterward. It was short, just 5 words. I'm shaking. But I did it. That one sentence said everything. For years, Sophie had believed in Leo, believed that his calmness was kindness, that his stability was safety. But now she saw it for what it really was, a carefully constructed illusion, a cage with nice furniture. When she confronted him, he didn't cry, he didn't apologize. He got cold, dismissive. He said things like, "You're being emotional," and this is exactly what Clara wanted. He told her she was hormonal, that she regretted, that she was tearing apart a good home over some moody college kid's lies. Sophie recorded the entire conversation on her phone. Not for evidence, for closure. When she played it back for me, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt grief. Because hearing the way he weaponized his calm voice, even while being confronted, reminded me exactly why I hadn't spoken up sooner. Abusers don't always scream. Sometimes they whisper. And their whispers can be louder than any scream you've ever heard. Our parents didn't know what to say at first. I could tell they felt guilty. Not just about what happened in Sophie's marriage, but about the way they'd let us both down as kids. We should been there, my mom said, eyes red, voice shaking. You girls raised yourselves. It was the closest thing to an apology we'd ever gotten from her. My dad offered something more practical. You two are staying with us, he said firmly, until you figure out next steps. No rent, no pressure, we'll help however we can. Sophie was hesitant. I could see the storm behind her smile. Returning to the home that failed her wasn't easy, but she agreed, for now, for the baby. We began planning the next move together. It started with lists. What she needed from the house. What I had left behind in that guest bedroom, I no longer thought of as mine. Sophie wanted to be careful. She didn't want a confrontation. So we built a strategy. Ben offered to come with us. Not just as backup, but as someone who made us both feel steady, and my dad insisted on being there too, not to play hero but to serve as a buffer, just in case Leo showed up or tried anything manipulative. We chose a weekday morning when we knew Leo would be out for a client meeting. Sophie still had access to the house key. We moved quickly, methodically, quietly. Clothes, documents, baby books, jewelry, anything personal or irreplaceable. I packed what I'd left in drawers. Sophie grabbed her ultrasound photos and the journals she hidden behind a false panel in the closet, her real thoughts, the ones she never dared say aloud until now. There was a weird stillness in the air. The house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a museum of lies, a gallery of ghosted intentions. We were almost finished when the front door opened. Leo. He stepped in, paused mid-frame, and froze. The energy in the room changed instantly. Ben stood up, my father too. Leo's eyes flicked between us, calculating, cornered, but trying to look calm. Sophie straightened her spine and said, "We are just here to collect what's ours." Leo tried to speak. "You could they just—" "No," she cut in. "You don't speak to me anymore. Not without a lawyer." She held her phone up, "And we are recording this." Leo's mouth opened, then closed. He stepped aside. And that was it. No apology, no last-minute theatrics. Just silence. As we walked out of the house for the final time, I looked back once. I expected to feel anger or triumph. Instead, I felt nothing. And that was the victory. Because I'd finally stopped waiting for an explanation that would never come. We went to a cafe afterward, me, Sophie, Ben, and my dad. We sipped lukewarm coffee and tried to smile like things were normal. Sophie looked exhausted, but lighter. "I never thought I'd leave," she admitted, staring into her cup. "I thought having a baby would fix it, that it would make everything click." Ben reached across the table and placed his hand over hers. "You did the bravest thing." She nodded, eyes misty. I want my child to grow up knowing what love actually looks like." I smiled. "They will, because they'll have you." That night, Sophie and I curled up on opposite ends of the couch in our parents' living room, just like we used to as kids, back when things were broken, but we had each other. And we cried. Not just for what we'd lost, but for what we were building now, a future without fear, a family redefined. Healing isn't a sunrise. It's not a single moment where the clouds part and everything suddenly makes sense. It's quieter than that, more like a string of ordinary days, slowly stitched together with better choices, with people who show up, with spaces that feel safe. That's what the weeks after leaving Leo looked like for both of us. Sophie moved into the upstairs guest room at our parents' house. I took the room I used to call mine when I was a teenager, though it felt a little different now, a little less haunted. At first, we kept everything small. No big announcements, no dramatic family meetings. We just focused on the basics. Rest, food, appointments, getting through each day without bracing for impact. And in the middle of all that, there was Ben. He didn't swoop in to fix me. He didn't try to rescue me. What he did was harder. He stayed. He showed up with decaf coffee and fresh bread. He texted me photos of rescued kittens wearing ridiculous little bow ties. He made me laugh when I forgot I still could. And when I flinched at sudden noises or froze during conversations about trust, he never looked at me like I was broken. Just healing. He asked if I wanted to go on a real first date. Now that I wasn't hiding anymore, I said yes. He picked me up and took me to a small family-run restaurant near the edge of town, one with mismatched silverware and handwritten menus and music, soft enough that you could actually talk. We sat for hours trading stories, good ones this time. Stories that didn't begin with, "You won't believe what happened to me," but rather, "You won't believe how good this lasagna is." There was no pressure, just peace. And it felt new, foreign, almost suspicious. But real. I told him everything eventually, the whole story start to finish. He didn't interrupt. He didn't make it about him. He just listened. And when I finished, he said, "You're not weak, Clara. You're one of the strongest people I know." And I believed him. Because I'd finally stopped trying to survive quietly. I'd finally used my voice. Sophie was doing the same. Her days became a rhythm of appointments, prenatal classes, and setting boundaries, something she admitted she'd never been good at before, but she was learning. She started therapy. She joined an online group for single mothers recovering from emotionally manipulative relationships. She was scared, but she was also sure. The more she unpacked, the more she realized that Leo had been rewriting her instincts for years, dismissing her concerns, calling her dramatic or irrational, shaping her silence not with fear, but with guilt. "That's the part that still gets me," she told me one night. "He never needed to raise his voice. He just made me feel like my feelings were burdens, so I stopped having them." But now, things were different. One morning, I found her in the kitchen, humming softly as she sliced strawberries for her oatmeal. Her hair was tied up, her belly showing through a loose t-shirt that said Mama Bear in progress. "You look happy," I said. She smiled. "I think I am." And for the first time in a long time, I didn't question it. We even started planning for the baby, what color the nursery should be at our parents' house, whether Sophie wanted to look for a new place after the baby arrived, what kind of name felt strong but soft. Every little decision felt like a step forward. One afternoon, we went back to the forums I'd found when everything first started unraveling. We didn't read them as victims anymore. We read them as survivors. I posted a thank you message. Just a few paragraphs, no real names, no dramatic flair, just a simple story. I was living with someone I thought I could trust. He started crossing lines. "I didn't know what was happening until I read your stories. You gave me the clarity to leave. You gave me the courage to tell someone. You probably saved my life. Thank you." The responses flooded in. Dozens of them, women and men saying they'd felt the same way, that they were still in it, that they were trying to get out, that they were proud of me, that they needed to believe healing was possible. I told them it was. Because it is. It looks different for everyone, but it always starts the same way, by naming the thing that hurt you and choosing not to carry its shame anymore. Sophie and I aren't fixed. We still have hard days, triggers, fears that sneak in when we least expect them. But now we face them together. We are no longer two sisters surviving alone under the weight of our upbringing. We are women building something better. For ourselves. For the next generation. For anyone who needs to hear that it's okay to leave, that it's okay to speak, that you are not crazy. You are not selfish. You are not broken. You're just waking up. And when you do, there's a whole world waiting on the other side of fear. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Sometimes the people who make you feel safest at first are the ones you have to run from the fastest. But that doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean you were naive or weak or to blame. It just means you trusted and they betrayed that trust. And that's on them. I used to think danger came with shouting, with violence, with obvious warning signs, but I know now that it also comes quietly, with smiles, with polite words, with a hand on your shoulder that lingers 1 second too long. Leo didn't need to scream to make me feel small. He just needed me to stay quiet, to doubt myself, to believe that the pit in my stomach was paranoia, not a warning. But when I finally trusted that instinct, when I finally listened to myself instead of silencing the voice inside me, I got out. And so did Sophie. We broke the cycle. We stopped waiting for someone to save us and chose to save each other. To every person watching this, who's sitting in silence, questioning your own reality, wondering if you're being dramatic or sensitive, or imagining things, I want you to hear me. You are not crazy. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And you are allowed to leave before it gets worse. You don't need bruises to justify your fear. You don't need proof to earn protection. Your comfort, your boundaries, your gut, they matter. You matter. And there are people out there who will believe you, who will show up when you're ready, who won't demand an explanation before offering you safety. Ben was one of those people for me. So were the strangers in those online forums who shared their truth so bravely that it gave me the words I couldn't find myself. So was Sophie when she said, "I believe you." That sentence changed everything. It gave me permission to reclaim my story. And now, I'm passing that permission forward. Because if this story reaches even one person who's feeling stuck, scared, or ashamed, then it was worth telling. You don't need to wait until things get unbearable. You don't need to prove that someone is bad enough to justify leaving. You just need to decide that you are worth more than walking on eggshells. And you are. Sophie's baby is due in a few weeks. We've already painted the nursery. Yellow walls, soft green curtains, a mobile that plays lullabies. It's not perfect. Nothing is, but it's full of love and peace and intention. Ben and I still take things slow. Some days I wake up unsure of myself, but then he kisses my forehead and says, "We are okay," and I remember what it's like to breathe in a room that doesn't feel dangerous. That's the gift I want to carry forward. The legacy I want to build, not one shaped by what happened to me, but by what I chose to do with it. I chose to survive. I chose to speak. And most importantly,